In the south of the Greek mainland, the kingdom of Sparta holds its court in a Mycenaean-style palace of painted walls and storerooms, heavy with jars of oil. Menelaus, king by marriage, rules with his queen, Helen, whose beauty has already drawn oaths, alliances, and fear. Across the sea stands Troy, a rich city by the straits, under King Priam and his many sons. This is a story told by poets, sung in halls from the Aegean to the far west, about the betrayal that moved kings to launch ships. The stakes are not only love and anger, but also law, lineage, sacred guest right, and the fragile peace of many small kingdoms. The palace at Sparta rises with the dawn. A bell sounds softly in the inner court. Beeswax candles gutter as the first light reaches painted griffins on the walls. Servants sweep the threshold with reed brooms. An enslaved woman opens shutters to let in the smell of herbs from the courtyard: bay, mint, and wild thyme. The marble is cold underfoot. Sandals make a light tapping on the stone. On a cedar table lies a gold seal ring, engraved with lions rearing toward a pillar. This is Menelaus' sign of authority, his word carried in wax and clay. He wears it to authenticate decrees and to seal jars in the storerooms. It is his symbol, and also the symbol of an agreement older than his reign. The oath that once bound the great families to defend the husband, chosen for Tyndareus' daughter, Helen. Helen moves through the hall with her veil arranged carefully. Her veil is linen, light as air, embroidered at the edges by patient hands. Attendants carry baskets of wool. A musician tunes a lyre in a side room. In public, Helen is grace and order. She greets petitioners with calm courtesy. She asks after children, sends oil to a shrine, receives a gift of a simple clay bird from a shepherd as wife, and thanks her as if it were gold. She is a queen. She is also a woman, aware of every eye on her, and of the weight that rests on her name. Menelaus is not the largest king in the Aegean. That title belongs to his older brother, Agamemnon of Mycenae. But Menelaus holds something no warrior can forge with metal: marriage to Helen, and the honor that came when every prince in Greece swore to protect that union from any insult. He knows the oath is both shield and chain. At night, he turns the gold ring in his hand and feels the grooves of the lions as if they were teeth. Messengers arrive with sea salt still on their cloaks. They bring news of grain shipments, of a distant quarrel over pasture land, of a small shrine in need of roof beams. They also bring a lettered tablet from a Trojan envoy, stamped in clay with a foreign seal, an unfamiliar emblem of a horse beneath a star. There is talk of a visit from Troy, to exchange gifts and smooth trade. Menelaus keeps his face composed. He knows that gifts can be a path to friendship or to a test. In the women's quarters, a young scribe sits on a stool and reads inventory to the steward. The steward is precise, his beard dressed with oil. He recites, 2 silver bowls embossed with doves, 4 amphorae of oil, 1 chest of blue-dyed wool. He pauses at a smaller entry. 1 locket of carnelian, a personal item. The scribe notes the detail. The carnelian glows when the light passes through it. Later, when she sees it around Helen's neck, she will remember the list. Objects have lives. They move. They are noticed. A priest of the household gods takes bread to the hearth and murmurs a blessing. He glances at the queen and nods. He passes the king and lowers his eyes. Law and religion meet here. Guest right, Xenia, is sacred. A guest must be treated with honor and protection. A host must give gifts. To break this is to invite the anger of gods, or at least the anger of men who believe in them. News spreads quickly in a palace. The Trojan emissary is not an old man with a pile of tablets. He is a prince. He comes with a small retinue. His name is Paris, though some call him Alexander. He is lithe, with the restless energy of youth. He wears a cloak with a border woven in a pattern unfamiliar to Spartan eyes, a pattern like waves edged with fire. He carries a harp. He smiles easily. He watches closely. The first meeting is formal. Lamplight, a cool breeze from the courtyard, a bowl of wine mixed with water and honey. Menelaus lifts his ring, presses it into wax, and the steward carries the sealed gift tablet to the stores. Paris offers gifts: a ribbon dyed deep red, a small jar of perfumed oil, a pendant shaped like a crescent moon. When he presents the oil, the scent rises: myrtle, resin, and a sea wind note that people in the hall will recall years later when they try to describe what made that day unusual. Helen watches the ceremony. She is trained to. She knows how to measure a guest's posture, how to receive praise, how to smile in a way that honors her husband's authority. When she speaks, her Greek is music, slow, careful, perfect. She asks Paris about the walls of Troy, whether they are as high as some say. He answers with a poet's flourish, not an engineer's measure. He speaks of the strait that shivers under the moon, of ships pulled by hand across sand when the wind dies. He mentions his father, Priam, with affection. He does not boast of victories. He praises the Spartan horses and the taste of water from the Eurotas River. He is a good guest. At night, the palace feels like a ship at anchor. The hall is long. The hours are slow. Helen's attendants bring a lamp and set it near her work. She holds her veil in her lap and runs a finger along the embroidered edge. The carnelian locket rests cool against her skin. Outside, a dog barks once and is quiet. Inside, somewhere, a hinge creaks. Then a key turns and a door settles into its frame with a dull wooden thud. The household breathes. The next day, Paris asks to tour the storerooms. He moves with curiosity, not arrogance. He asks about the seal impressions on clay stoppers and how the oil is kept fresh. He listens as the steward explains the counting rods, the marks on the tablets, the god's share sent to shrines. He is not only a prince, he is a trader's son too, trained to value what can be counted. The steward warms to him. He shows Paris the gold ring, briefly, the 2 lions, how, when pressed, it leaves a proud print in wax. Paris's eyes trace the design and hold it for a moment longer than polite. In the women's court, Paris is careful. He is a guest. He cannot roam freely. When he sees Helen, it is at a distance. He bows, his hands open to show he carries no threat. She inclines her head. Her veil falls a little, and for a heartbeat he sees the line of her cheek. She feels, not his gaze exactly, but the attention of the room shift. She raises her eyes and meets his once. It is quick. It is formal. It is enough to make everyone else inhale. The oath, Tyndareus' oath, hums like the string of a lyre. Its music is not loud, but it vibrates through every exchange. All men who swore to protect the marriage of Helen to Menelaus did so to prevent bloodshed. The oath binds them still. It binds her too in ways not named, as duty and as caution. She wears her veil like a banner and a shield. She knows the power of her face. She hides it to keep peace. That night, Menelaus rolls the ring in his palm before sleep. He is human. He is sometimes jealous without reason. He tells himself he is a king. He sets the ring on the cedar table. He reaches to draw the curtain, and in that small moment, he knocks the ring. It falls and spins and settles with the lion heads up as if they are watching. In the shadows, someone watches too. Not with malice, more with the survival instinct of someone whose life depends on reading the room. An enslaved attendant, charged with tending lamps and sweeping ash from the hearth, sees the ring shift. She sees the king stoop and pick it up. She files away the image because she files away everything. Her safety depends on anticipation. She knows the sound of an argument before voices rise, the squeak of a sandal before a visitor arrives, the new tone in her mistress's voice when she speaks to a stranger. She carries all this like a bundle strapped to her back. It makes her tired. The palace breathes again. It seems simple from the outside. A king, a queen, a guest, gifts, a veil, a ring. But a whisper begins to move like smoke. What would happen if a guest became more than a guest? What would break first? The oath, the law, or a heart? On the third day, Menelaus must travel. There are funeral rites on an island. Some say Crete, some say a closer shore, for a relative whose burial requires his presence. It is customary. It is pious. It is inconvenient. He debates sending a deputy. He decides carefully that he must go. He leaves Paris in the care of his household, under the protection of guest right. He leaves Helen under the protection of a lifetime of watching eyes. As he departs, the gold seal ring glints in the sun. He grips the chariot rail. He glances back, just once, at the palace door. Helen stands there with her veil drawn. She lifts a hand a little. The carnelian locket at her throat catches the light and goes dark again as the veil's edge falls over it. When the dust of his departure settles, the palace looks the same. But the balance of the room has changed by a hair. Sometimes, a hair is enough to move a destiny. At noon, Paris walks in the gallery where frescoed dolphins leap. He stops before a painted woman offering a flower. His guide talks. He nods. His gaze slips to the door across the court. He hears a bell ring. The guide leads on. The door across the court stays closed. It is a private door. The audience notices it, even if the guide does not. On a bench near the door sits a small woven basket. It holds spindles and a length of fine thread. It also holds, tucked in a corner, the moon-shaped pendant Paris gave. It is not hidden. It is not displayed. It waits, like a note not yet read. The first strange thing is small. A cup of wine left unfinished on a sill, warming in the sun. An attendant reaches for it and hesitates. The cup bears a foreign motif, horse and star, and the lip shows, not the king's, but the light touch of someone who does not drink to excess. The attendant carries it away and washes it twice. The second strange thing is a diverted carriage. A short drive is planned from the palace to a shrine of Athena outside the walls. The path curves along the river, where reeds whisper. At a fork, the driver mistakes the left road for the right. The carriage pauses and corrects. It is a small mistake, but the driver says, later, that the prince leaned forward, almost as if to give an instruction, and then sat back. The driver tells the tale as if it were nothing, yet he remembers because it felt like a tug on a net, and he cannot forget it. Helen's days continue in their pattern. She directs weaving. She oversees a meal for visiting women from another household. She walks in the upper court in the cool of morning. 2 attendants behind her, one to carry a stool if she wishes to sit, one to carry a jar of water and a cloth. She stops beside a painted pillar and rests her fingers on the cool surface. In that pause, the world is quiet enough to hear the bees. Her face is calm. Under the veil, her breath comes a shade faster than it used to. Paris practices shooting in the courtyard with a simple bow. He draws and releases. The arrow thuds into a straw target. He is not showing off. He does not grin. He is practicing as if his next test is not in the hall, but in himself. After a time, he puts down the bow and lifts the harp. He plays a melody no one in Sparta has heard, a melody that tastes like salt and late oranges on a winter shore. A servant, sweeping, misses a beat and stands listening. The melody is not loud. It lingers after he stops. A clerk misplaces a wooden tablet. He looks in the storeroom, then in the steward's office. He finds it finally under a folded cloth in the women's court, set aside as if someone expected to return to it. The tablet lists gifts exchanged. On it is the king's seal. The clerk frowns. The king is away. The seal on the tablet is clear. The lions are perfect. He looks carefully. The wax is smooth around the edge, without a second impression. He says nothing. He straightens the cloth and puts the tablet in his belt. Later he will tell the steward. The steward will tell himself it is a simple matter of using already sealed wax for a non-urgent list. Later still, He will ask who had access to the ring. In the afternoon, a door that should be open is found closed, not locked, simply resting on its latch. A handprint shows briefly in the dust on the outer edge where someone pushed it carefully. The attendant who sees it wipes it away, then realizes her own mistake. She has erased a sign that might have been useful later. She tells herself no. She tells herself she has saved a woman from a rumor that does not need to exist. Paris requests to see the storerooms again. He praises the organization. He asks after the ring. The steward, alert to propriety, keeps answers clipped and respectful. The ring rests, the steward says, in the chest where the king keeps his personal items. He says this without thinking. Then he realizes he has given information and stops. Paris bows and speaks of something else. The moon is thin. The air has a bite. The palace settles. In a small chamber near the gallery, Helen sits with her attendants. They comb wool. They talk of simple things: bread, winter, whether the olive harvest will be heavy. One attendant watches her hands. They are steady, but at one moment they pause, and Helen stares at the carnelian locket as if she can see, inside it, a road splits in two. That evening, a stranger's laugh echoes in the lower court. It is brief. It belongs to a member of Paris's retinue who has had too much wine. The steward frowns. He sends a servant to remind the guests of courtesy. When the servant returns, he says the prince has already settled his companion and sent him to rest. The steward relaxes a little. Respect is observed. But the echo of the laugh hangs in the room like smoke. The next day, Paris requests a private audience with the queen to present a dedication for the shrine. It is a common request. The steward is present. 2 attendants stand by. Paris opens a cedar box and shows a small figure carved of wood, a goddess with open hands, the elbows at right angles, the style foreign but not unpleasing. He states he wishes to leave it at the local temple in gratitude for hospitality. Helen approves and asks that it be recorded. The steward notes it. The moment is formal and safe. And then it is over. That night, a piece of fabric is found on the palace steps. A small triangle of linen, embroidered. It might be from Helen's veil. It might be from another woman's sleeve. The thread is a common shade. The steward picks it up and puts it in his belt. He will return it to the basket of scraps. He will forget where he found it. Later, he will wish he had remembered. Paris walks at the boundary of the lights. He steps into a patch of unlit stone and stops. He looks up. The stars are sharp. Somewhere, far off, a dog barks again. He hears a footfall behind him and turns. It is one of Helen's attendants, with a small jar. She has been sent for oil. Her voice is quiet when she speaks. My lady asks that you leave the figure at the temple at dawn. She will send a ribbon with her name to tie upon it. He nods. He bows. She has been sent for oil. Her voice is quiet when she speaks. My lady asks that you leave the figure at the temple at dawn. She will send a ribbon with her name to tie upon it. He nods. He bows. The attendant turns, and her bracelet catches the light and throws it against the wall in a thin line that looks for a moment like a path. The first real sign is a word spoken in the wrong room. In the men's hall, a member of Paris's company mentions a name, Helen, when he should say, the Queen. It is a slip. He corrects himself. The room's air tenses. It relaxes again. One man glances around to see if anyone else noticed. Many did. No one speaks. The rumor becomes a creature. It sprouts legs. It moves from kitchen to courtyard, from cloakroom to hallway. It changes shape. In one telling, the queen smiled too long. In another, the prince paused too near. In a third, an attendant carried a ribbon that smelled of foreign oil. No one mentions a hand on a hand. No one saw one. And yet, the air is full of touch. The law of guest right presses on everyone. The steward reminds the staff, courtesy. The priest reminds the household, Boundaries. The attendants remind each other, eyes down, ears open, mouths shut. They are not cynical. They are careful. They know that if something breaks, it will break first on the backs of those closest. At dawn, the dedication is made. The wooden figure is placed on a stone at the temple. A ribbon is tied. It bears Helen's name, embroidered by a steady hand. The priestess nods. She touches the ribbon. Her fingers are cool. She says a blessing that is as old as the river. In the thin light, the ribbon looks gray. Later, in the sun, it will flash red like a warning. When Paris returns to the palace, he passes the ring on the cedar table. He pauses. He does not touch it. He looks at the lions and thinks, not of kingship, but of pressure. The pressure of a seal on wax. The pressure of a choice on a life. Some evenings, there is music. Paris plays. Helen listens from the women's court, separated by a door. He sings of a city under stars, of a quiet harbor, of a hand not taken. His voice is clear. He does not call her name. He does not need to. The near discovery comes on a day of rain. The courtyard stones darken. Drops patter on the roof tiles. A messenger arrives with wet hair and a voice pitched too high. He says he brings word that the king will return soon, sooner than planned. The steward nods and calculates. He thinks of rooms to be aired, of a meal to be set, of small errors to be corrected before the king's eyes measure them. At the edge of the women's court, a door opens. Helen steps into the shadow of the threshold. Paris, coming along the gallery, stops without taking another step. Their eyes meet, and for the second time, the world pauses. A drop of rain falls from the eave and hits stone with a tiny, sharp sound. An attendant, carrying a folded cloth, stops too. She turns her head away, but she does not move. No one says a word. Then Paris bows. He steps back. Helen lifts her veil. The rain makes a soft hiss. The door closes. Later, a story will be told that an object was dropped. A locket, a pendant, a ring, and that the sound drew someone to the door. It is not clear what was dropped. It is not clear who picked it up. That night, a closed door that should be open becomes a wall. A hand reaches for a key. It pauses. It withdraws. Rumor says it was the queen's hand. Rumor says it was not. The next morning, the wind changes. The harbor smells like distance. The household receives a second message. The king is delayed again. The funeral rites were extended for a night of remembrance. The steward exhale is audible, and in that slackening of the rope, something happens. The palace remembers the sound of mourning. It remembers the scrape of the bolt lifted quiet as possible. It remembers the low murmur of two people who know the walls have ears. It remembers the quick intake of breath when a footstep in the hall almost becomes a discovery, and then passes on like a cloud. The pivotal event is not a feast. It is not a battle of words in the open hall. It is a sequence of small timings, lined up like beads on a string. Before dawn, the steward goes to the storeroom to check the seals. He lifts a jar, turns it, and notes that the wax is whole. He does not see the thing he is not expecting. A small secondary impression on a piece of scrap wax, pressed for practice or for nerves, left beside the candle on a shelf. It holds the lions, slightly off-center. The shelf is shadowed. He does not look there. He moves on. In the gallery, a lamp is lit where no lamp should be. Its flame is small, shielded by a hand. The hand is steady. The lamp's glow pools on a narrow strip of floor like a path drawn in honey. The path leads to a side door, the one near the woven basket, the one near the place where the painted woman offers a flower. Paris stands where the lamplight ends. He has spoken the words to himself all night. Law, oath, guest right, father, city, sea. He does not say love. To say it would be to place a name on a stone and expect it to hold. Words are heavy. He keeps his mouth closed. Helen comes swift. her veil drawn low. Behind her, 2 attendants stand at a distance that is both protective and helpless. One holds a folded shawl. The other holds nothing, because her hands shake. Helen stops in the lamplight. Her veil flickers with the little flame. The carnelian glows. Her voice, when she speaks, is quiet and exact. She speaks of gods, because that is what people expect queens to speak of. She says that some say a goddess promised Paris a prize that was not hers to give. She says that if this is true, it is the kind of story men tell when they do not want to admit what they chose. She speaks of another law, older than any seal. A person must not live a lie so large it makes the sky feel low. Paris listens. He does not rush. He does not reach. He asks if she is safe. She answers that safety has many faces. She says she will not hide in a room and pretend she did not see her life when it walked past her. She says she is afraid. She says she is also tired of being a symbol pinned to a board. She is a person. She wants to breathe without asking permission from a wall. He asks about the oath. She says she knows it. She says she knows that men will use it like a rope to tie themselves together for battle. She says she knows that if they need a cause, they will call it her name. She says she cannot prevent that by staying. It will happen whether she leaves or not. The jealousy is already coiled. He asks what she wants. She does not answer yet. She walks to the cedar table and looks at the gold ring. She lifts it, feeling the groove of the lions. She does not put it on her finger. She presses it into her palm until the imprint stings. She sets it down. She says that if she stays, she betrays herself. If she goes, she betrays others. Either way, there is betrayal. The world is shaped like that. She wants, she says finally, to leave the room where her name is a wall and move to a place where it can be a window. She understands the cost. There is no kiss. There is a promise spoken so quietly that even the lamp flame seems to listen. Paris says he will not make her run. He will make ready a ship. He will leave a space for her to choose at dawn. He will not break the law of guest right by force. He will break it by consent, if it breaks at all. He will take the blame as much as any person can, knowing that blame is a tide that does not ask permission. One mistake almost exposes them. A member of Paris's retinue, rising early, comes down the passage for water. He sees the lamplight under the door. He hears a voice and stops. He leans, just a little. He drops the cup. It hits stone and rings like a bell. The voices inside stop. He snatches up the cup and slips away, heart in his throat. He does not know what he heard, only that it was something that will not forgive him if he speaks. The decision is a seal. It is made in the body and in the law. Helen goes to the chest, opens it with a key, and takes from it not jewels, but a folded cloth, a plain shawl without embroidery. It is something to wrap herself in that does not announce her. She lifts a small wooden box, opens it, and lets a single ring slide into her palm. It is not the king's ring. It is her ring, a simple band that once belonged to her mother. She closes her hand over it, the way a person closes a door. Paris moves to the threshold. The lamp gutters, as if it knows it has done its work. He opens the door. The pre-dawn air is cold enough to pinch. The courtyard stones are damp. The sky is the color of ash before a fire catches. The attendants follow at a distance, eyes on the ground. At the last step, Helen stops. She looks back at the hall. The painted griffins watch with impassive faces. The ring on the cedar table gleams faintly. She looks at the place where she has eaten bread, where she has blessed oil, where she has spoken for people with no one else to speak for them. She whispers something. It might be a prayer. It might be a goodbye. In the stables, a horse stamps and breathes fog. In the harbor, a rope creaks in a cleat. A sailor shifts in his sleep. The ship is a simple, shallow vessel, with a painted eye on the prow to see the way. It rocks with small, impatient movements. Paris's men are ready. They avoid the word steal. They avoid any word at all. A second mistake becomes a miracle of timing that saves them. The steward, who always wakes before dawn, is delayed by a child who has a fever. He sends a runner for the healer and waits for just 5 minutes longer than usual in his small chamber, counting his breath and the steps between his words and the door. Helen steps onto the path to the harbor. She does not run. She does not drift. She walks as if she is a queen taking her place at a new table. Her attendants follow. One of them begins to cry without sound. The other stares at the sky and sees in it a bird with black wings traveling steadily east. At the harbor, the ship sits with its rope looped twice. Paris reaches for it. He pauses. He looks at Helen. He waits for her to nod. She nods. He frees the rope. The ship leans a little toward the open water, like a person who has made a decision and feels for a second lighter. Behind them, a door opens in the palace. A figure steps out, the steward, finally free to move. He sees the empty court. He sees a lamp burning where it should have been out. He sees a scrap of ribbon snagged on a nail. He closes his eyes. He begins to run. The ship pushes off. The oars take the water. The prow turns. The city recedes, not with drama, but with the soft, relentless slide of distance. The veil flutters. The ring in Helen's palm warms. Paris stands beside her without touching her. On the shore, the steward arrives in time to see only the ship's stern, the painted eye looking back. He stops. He lifts a hand as if to call. He does not call. He says, in a voice like a prayer said wrong, "Law." Then he says another word, "War." The wind hits them clean at the harbor mouth. The ship's small sail fills. The line hums. The sea opens. The immediate consequence is simple. They are gone. The unresolved consequence is everything else. The palace becomes a council chamber. Men gather with faces drawn tight. The steward presents what he knows, which is not enough to satisfy anyone. He shows the scrap of ribbon. He points to the lamp that burned too late. He speaks of the ship's departure, the time, the tide. He cannot say what was said or why. Envoys are sent along the coast. Runners are dispatched. A message goes to Mycenae to Agamemnon. Injury to my house. Guest right broken. Oath of Tyndareus invoked. Come. The messenger breaks his sandals and does not stop for food. Menelaus returns to a courtyard echoing with words. He steps from his chariot and knows at once before anyone speaks. He looks to the door. He looks to the cedar table. He sees the ring lying where he left it. He picks it up and presses it into his palm. He lifts it, ready to hurl it, and does not. He sets it down. He asks for facts. His voice is iron laid flat on the table. The steward tells him. He does not embellish. He does not apologize beyond the apology for not smelling storm sooner. Menelaus listens without moving. He asks which attendants were near. He has them brought. He does not threaten. He turns the ring slowly with his thumb, as if he is winding time backwards, wishing to stop at the place where the mistake was still avoidable. The first attendant lifts her eyes and lowers them. She says there was a message for the temple. She says she carried it. She says she saw nothing else. The second attendant looks at the king and at the floor. She says she carried a shawl. She says the wind was cold. She says she heard the sound of a rope on wood. She says she is sorry for what that means. The priest is called. He speaks of the oath. He says it is holy. He says it must be honored. He also says that the God who watches guest right punishes both the breaker and the unduly proud. He says pride and pain often sit at the same table. Menelaus nods once. Agamemnon arrives like a storm taking a familiar path. He enters not as a brother offering sorrow, but as a commander taking inventory. He looks at the ring. He looks at the steward. He looks at the messenger who has returned from the coast, with news that a ship was seen, that it turned east, that it did not stop at the nearest harbor. He speaks in terms of lines of ships, of supplies, of messages to be sent to the other kings who once made their oath and now must live it. In the quiet between louder voices, Menelaus sits. He holds a piece of linen, the small triangle someone found on the steps. He rubs it between his fingers. He remembers the smell of the oil on Helen's hair, a scent of myrtle and something like a winter wind. He recalls with sudden clarity the day she thanked the shepherd's wife for a clay bird. He feels not rage, not yet, but an ache that has no shape. In Troy, across the sea, the debate begins too. Priam hears that his son arrives with a foreign queen. He steps back as if the words are physical. Hecuba, his queen, looks at Paris with eyes that see the child he was and the man he is now. Hector, the eldest, a soldier with calm hands, speaks first. You did this. The oaths were broken. You have put the city at risk for your desire. Send her back with gifts and apologies. Do it now, before our name is cut on men's lips like a sharp thing. Paris answers carefully, respectfully, but with a will that will not bend. He says that Helen came by choice. He says that to return her is to shame both her and his own soul. He says that guest right is also binding on the guest. He left when the bond had been strained beyond repair. Hecuba listens. She says nothing yet. Priam covers his mouth with his hand. He feels the heavy ring on his finger press into his lip. Helen stands in the Trojan hall, quiet in a new light. She is not a prisoner bound. She is also not free. Freedom, she realizes, is not a place. It is a kind of breath. She breathes, and it is not easy at first. She lifts a hand and touches the wooden goddess figure Paris placed at a shrine in Sparta. She touches it lightly. She says to Hecuba, in a voice used in rooms where women must find their honesty among careful words, I came here. I am here. I will not pretend otherwise. Judge me for that if you must, but do not judge me for lies others will put in my mouth. The elders of Troy gather in the gatehouse, away from the glare of noon. They argue. Some say, a woman cannot be worth a city. Others say, some women bear cities in their names. They are not speaking only of beauty. They speak of alliances, of the way a queen's presence can bring trade routes and prestige, or bring war. The law of guest friendship is invoked in reverse. To send a guest away, now that she has come seeking sanctuary, is also a breach. It is a web. Everyone hallows what part of it helps them. In Sparta, an embassy is sent to Troy to ask for Helen's return. The ambassadors carry olive branches. They speak with calm words about oaths, theft, injury. They say that peace is still possible. In some versions of the story, a man named Odysseus tries to negotiate, to bring the matter down from the heat of song to the cool of clause and compromise. In other versions, thunder is already too loud for words to be heard. The ambassadors are received. Priam offers hospitality, knowing every gesture is weighed. He listens. He asks questions. He looks at Helen. She does not hide. She wears the same veil. The carnelian glows in this hall too. She says, in measured phrases, that she came with Paris. The ambassadors note it without writing, because this is not the kind of hall where notes are taken openly. They return with the truth as they saw it. Ambiguous, human, hard. Rumors clash with official speech. In one telling, a goddess whisked Helen away, leaving a phantom behind. In another, she was a willing partner. In a third, she was a captive behind polite doors. The truth is not simple. It lives in the way her hand shook once when she lifted a cup, in the way Paris waited for her to nod before untying a rope, in the way Menelaus went still instead of shattering the ring when he heard. Agamemnon gathers the kings. Ships are called. Oaths are invoked with palm on steel, with eyes on the horizon. People speak of honor in public and of fear in private. A mother in a coastal town folds a blanket and thinks of her son. A shipwright dips his hands in oil and prays to every god he can name. The line between love and duty blurs. For Menelaus, love is duty. Duty is love. For Paris, love has become a duty that will define him beyond his city's laws. For Helen, duty to self clashes with duty to state and household. She is condemned in advance by those who believe the categories cannot be held together. She is honored in secret by those who have felt themselves break on the wheel of expectation. The final, desperate choice comes in Troy. Hector says again, "Send her back. We can pay the price now, or we will pay later with more than gold." Paris answers, "I will not live with her as a coin I spent poorly." Priam chooses delay, which is sometimes choosing a side without saying so. He does not send her back. He does not declare war. He issues an order. Let there be time to think. The sea does not agree. War does not begin with a trumpet in this telling. It begins with the quiet exile of two people from the lives they knew. Helen, under candlelight in Troy, studies her reflection in a polished bronze mirror. The candle flickers. Her face moves with the flame. She lifts her veil and sets it aside. It no longer marks her as a Spartan queen. It is now a foreign banner in a foreign room. She folds it and places it in a cedar chest. She closes the lid. The key turns with a small scrape, a sound like a word that has finally found its shape. She closes the lid. The key turns with a small scrape, a sound like a word that has finally found its shape. Paris moves through the palace of Troy and begins to learn the hallways he will defend with his life. He knows where the stone dips from centuries of feet. He knows which steps the old king favors. He knows where the women gather to grind grain and tell the day's quiet news. He is gracious, because he must be. He is also restless, because something in him always was. In Sparta, Menelaus stands before the court and speaks in a voice that reaches the far corners of the hall without force. He says the oath is law. He says it was made not to protect his pride, but to keep the many from falling into a chaos of broken promises. He says the guest who broke the sacred trust must be answered, not because of one man's injury, but because the threshold is sacred. The ring on his finger glints. It is the same ring. It is not the same hand. Agamemnon gathers the fleet. He speaks to kings who were once suitors for Helen's hand. He says their honor is at stake. In their minds, they see not only honor, they see opportunity, trade routes, a chance to test their strength, a chance to be remembered in the songs. Men carry shields that shine in the sun. Mothers and wives stand in doorways and watch the ships leave. Enslaved men load the last jars of water. Enslaved women wipe the mouths of children and tie small amulets at their wrists. The dignity of their labor is unvoiced but absolute. In Troy, a woman in the market weighs olives and asks another, "Do you think she will stay?" The other woman says, "It is not for us to say." They talk about prices and about the first winds of the season. They look up when a young man strides by with shoulders set heavier than before. He nods to them. They nod back. Life continues. It is always so, even when the sky is already carrying the sails of 100 ships. The dynasty of Sparta is wounded, but does not break. The palace breathes with an emptiness where a voice used to be. The steward returns the small triangle of linen to the basket of scraps. He cannot bear to throw it away. He tells himself it's because waste is a sin. It is also because memory is a weight he would rather carry than abandon. Paris brings Helen to the temple of a local goddess. He asks for her protection. The priestess looks at Helen with a long, slow gaze that is not cruel. She ties a ribbon at Helen's wrist. It is a thin strip of cloth, dyed with a plant that smells like crushed leaves. The ribbon is the color of the sea just before sunrise. Helen touches it. She thinks of the ribbon she once tied in Sparta at another temple. She feels like a person in a song who finally hears the second verse. The visual motifs return altered. The ring that sealed Spartan jars becomes a badge of war, held up in embassies as proof of injury. The veil that once shielded a queen's face becomes a cloth folded in a chest, a private relic, not for the crowd. The carnelian locket that caught lamplight is now tucked under Helen's clothing where only the closest fabric knows it is there. She fingers it sometimes when she stands at the walls and looks out to sea, watching a gray line that might be weather or might be sails. The final image of consequence settles like ash on a late fire. At night, the Spartan palace is quiet. The steward walks alone. He pauses at the cedar table. He looks at the ring and reaches out. He does not take it. He straightens it so the lions face the door. He turns away and hears, in his head, the echo of a prize singer's voice that will come years later, making everything large, making everything bright. He knows the songs will not sing of him. He blows out the candle and leaves the room to its dark and its memory. Years pass. The story becomes not just what happened, but what people say happened, and then what people remember of what people said. In one version, a generation later, a workman lifting floorboards in a small antechamber in Sparta finds a gold ring. He brings it to the steward's son, who locks it in a chest and says nothing for a week, unable to decide whether returning it to the king is honor or a wound reopened. The ring's lions are still sharp. The wax that once knew its pressure is long gone. Another object tells a quieter tale. In Troy, a girl sweeping a room finds a ribbon under a chest. It is faded to the color of old smoke. She ties it in her hair without knowing whose wrist it once encircled. The ribbon catches the light for a moment at a window, and then darkens as a cloud crosses the sun. As for what we can call fact, centuries after these events, poets like Homer set the story into words that reached across time. The Iliad, composed likely in the 8th century BC and written down later, describes the war but begins deep into its 9th year. It frames causes and motives through speeches and choices. Earlier tales like the lost Cypria now survive only in summaries and fragments. They differ. Some speak more of goddesses and promises, others of human decisions. Modern readers look to archaeology for anchors. The citadel at Hisarlik, long associated with Troy, shows layers of destruction around the 13th-12th centuries BC. These layers prove conflict, but they do not prove a cause. Meanwhile, Hittite tablets from Anatolia mention a city called Wilusa and a prince named Alexandru, names some scholars cautiously connect to Ilios Troy and Alexander Paris. The connections are intriguing, but they remain debated. What endures, beyond stones and names, are the human stakes the story carries, guessed right as a sacred trust, and the abyss opened by breaking it. Oaths as the cords that hold a world together, and can strangle it when pulled. A queen's agency under a veil of duty. A prince's desire set against a city's survival. The way a choice made in a quiet room can change the shape of coasts, and the lives of people who never saw the inside of a palace. Historians continue to argue what is legend and what is memory. Was Helen taken, or did she go? Was Paris a thief, or a lover? Did an oath bind kings, or did greed and fear make ships ready long before a prince ever lifted a harp? Perhaps all are true in the way that art can hold many truths at once. The moral is not simple. The song bends toward awe and sorrow both. In a museum case today, you might see a Mycenaean signet ring with lions and think of the weight of a king's hand. On a hillside near the sea, you might smell crushed wild thyme and think of a ribbon tied to a goddess's image and left to fade. In a dusty storeroom, a curator lifts a fragment of a clay ceiling and sees the faint, reversed impression of a design long lost. The wax seal, finely broken after a century of silence, still holds the shape of a choice.